ব্রিগেডিয়ার জেনারেল নাজমা বেগম, উনি পেশাগত উন্নয়নের মাধ্যমে নারীর ক্ষমতায়ন, মানে উনি মিশনে গিয়েছেন, তারপর সাহিত্য চর্চা অনেক কাজ করেছেন আর কি। আর একটা স্যার মুস্তাহি শফি, আপনি তো জানেন সাহিত্য সংস্কৃতির মাধ্যমে নারী জাগরণ, মানে উনি ওই 71-এর তো উনি ওনার হাজবেন্ড ভাই তাদেরকে 71 সালে ধরে নিয়ে যায়, মেরে ফেলে, উনি পালিয়ে যান এবং ওই সময় উনি অনেক কাজ করেছিলেন আর কি 71-এ।
ওকে, ওয়েলকাম এভরিওয়ান। আমার মনে হয় আমরা কিছুক্ষণের মধ্যে শুরু করা দরকার। কি অবস্থা আমাদের পার্টিসিপেন্ট অ্যাটেন্ডেন্সের অবস্থা কি?
We have around 16 attendees right now.
Right.
I to a minute or two wait for it. We can start the webinar and start the live broadcast on Facebook as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum, Imran bhai, কেমন আছেন? How are you today?
চলছে মোশাররফ ভাই, thank you so much. Welcome to our chief guest, Qazi Roshan Akhtar sir. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much.
Secretary Moka.
Secretary, Ministry of Women and Children Affairs. Yes, very important ministry.
And Imran, we also have with us the principal from Sir John Wilson School.
Right.
And Sylvia, who is also part of our GAGE ODI team.
Right. Hi.
And then Ani Appa from A2I.
Right.
Welcome.
So we're waiting for Ananda Raihan, right? As one of the discussants.
He is, yes.
Yes, he's yet to join.
Okay.
Should we start at 3:35? I think 3:33 baje. So we can just
we could wait another 2 minutes. Yeah.
Imran bhai, our secretary Moka Roshan had a very busy day today. আজকে আবার ওই যে হলো রোকেয়া পদক বলে একটা অ্যাওয়ার্ড আছে, রোকেয়া পদক, এটা রোকেয়া দিতে দেওয়া হয়, প্রাইম মিনিস্টার দেন। তো আজকে সে দেওয়া হলো 5 জন বিশিষ্ট মহিলাকে যারা ওই উইমেন এম্পাওয়ারমেন্টের ক্ষেত্রে কন্ট্রিবিউট করেছেন, তাদেরকে দেওয়া হলো। প্রতি বছর দেওয়া হয়। she is the organizer, she is the host. আর তাছাড়া ওই কি adolescent girls এর উপরে একটা
স্ট্র্যাটেজির স্যার ওয়ার্কশপ হচ্ছিল স্যার, ন্যাশনাল অ্যাডোলেসেন্ট স্ট্র্যাটেজি, যেটা আমাদের একটা প্রজেক্ট আছে স্যার, সেই প্রজেক্ট থেকে এটা করা হচ্ছে। তো এটার একটা স্টাডি করা হয়েছে, তো সেই স্টাডির উপরে আজকে স্টেক হোল্ডারদের মানে রেকমেন্ডেশন গুলো নিয়ে একটা ওয়ার্কশপ চলছে।
Very good.
This webinar will also be helpful for you in this respect.
Yeah, hopefully will contribute. এই ন্যাশনাল অ্যাডোলেসেন্ট স্ট্র্যাটেজি মানে ধারণা পত্রটা মানে কারা করেছে বা গবেষণাটা, এটা কি বিআইডিএস থেকে?
তারা এই স্টাডিটা করেছে, আর এটি আসলে করা হচ্ছে, আমাদের একটি প্রজেক্ট আছে আর কি, অ্যাক্সিলারেটিং প্রোটেকশন ফর চিলড্রেন, ওই প্রজেক্টের আওতায় এটি করা হচ্ছে।
সরি, কোন প্রজেক্ট?
এটি অ্যাক্সিলারেটিং প্রোটেকশন ফর চিলড্রেন।
আচ্ছা।
এটা মিনিস্ট্রি অফ উইমেন অ্যাফেয়ার্স এর নিজস্ব প্রজেক্ট। একটা ইন্টারন্যাশনাল কনসালটেন্সি ফার্ম আছে, আর এই দিক থেকে আমার মনে হয় ডক্টর নাজনীন আহমেদও ইনভলভড আছেন।
আচ্ছা, ওকে। আমার মনে হয় we could start right now. I think.
Yes.
So I think we'll go on live.
Imran, just give me 1 second. আপনি একটু 30 সেকেন্ড পরে স্টার্ট করতে পারেন।
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে। Okay, should we start?
Ji,
Zareen? Okay. Okay, welcome everyone to today's BIGD webinar. I would like to first of all welcome our chief guest today, our Honorable Secretary Qazi Roshan Akhtar, Ministry of Women and Children Affairs, Government of Bangladesh. And we have with us also a panel of extremely distinguished discussants who I think come from different fields. So I'm really looking forward to their participation. We have got Sylvia, I can't really pronounce the name, Sylvia, so excuse me. But she is a qualitative researcher at GAGE, which is a program that we are a partner of. We have Jannatul Firdaus Ani, a national consultant for education innovation of Aspire to Innovate. We have Dr. Ananda Raihan, CEO of iSocial. Sabrina Shahid, Principal Sir John Wilson School. And we also have Mr. Musharraf Hussain Bhuiya, Senior Advisor to BIGD. And he is, we all know him, extremely distinguished civil servant, a former cabinet secretary, Government of Bangladesh. So welcome to you all. I think before we start, what I really wanted to do is just kind of frame the topic a bit, and then I'll hand it over to Mahin Sultan and to Lupita Haq to really do the presentation. We will conduct the whole session in English because we have got international participants. However, the question and answer can be in Bengali, English, or mixed as one feels comfortable. So that's how we'll conduct ourselves. So in terms of just framing today's presentation, which is on, it's a research that we did on adolescent voice and agency through ICT and mobile phone use. And this is part of, and we'll hear more about it, this is part of our partnership with GAGE, which is a global research program around building evidence base on adolescent issues around the world. And we are part of it along with James P. Grant School of Public Health from Bangladesh, and IPA, I believe, is also a member of this coalition. Now, what I really like to say is this forms a part of a much larger body of work and initiative that BIGD is spearheading. We have started a whole initiative around inclusive digitization, or digitization for inclusive development, where we want to really bring in a strong social science research perspective to ensure that the vision and the ambition of Digital Bangladesh actually benefits and creates impact in the lives of people. This is a new initiative BIGD has started, and we are doing, we are trying to organize our research, a number of research studies and research streams across our different clusters to really focus on this area of work, which is digitization for inclusive development. And this particular study is a very important part of that overall program of work that BIGD has sort of started. So with that, I'll basically hand over to Mahin Sultan. She's a senior fellow of practice at BIGD, and she heads up our gender and social transformation cluster. Mahin, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everybody, especially to our distinguished chair and panelists. Just a few words to situate the program. BIGD has been involved with Gender and Adolescence Global Evidence Program since its beginning in 2015. As Imran has mentioned, this is led by ODI and supported by formerly DFID, now FCDO. In Bangladesh, where a few institutions, JPG and IPA. We've been working since a number of years, both in Dhaka slums to follow adolescents, as well as in the Rohingya camps. And we're also a research partner in the program that the World Bank is doing with the Ministry of Education on adolescent health. And that program will be taking place in mainly Chittagong, Greater Chittagong and Greater Sylhet districts. And we're part of the qualitative aspect of that. So the GAGE is a mixed methods, multiple year, multiple country program, which is following overall about 20,000 girls and boys, including both longitudinal impact evaluations as well as more qualitative policy legal analysis. So one of the important things we aim to explore is which strategies are the most effective in transforming adolescent boys and girls' lives at special points in time during the adolescence decade. And we are working across Jordan and Lebanon on one hand, then Nepal and Bangladesh, and then Rwanda and Ethiopia. So among the different consortium members, there are international academic institutions such as George Washington University, London School of Economics, ITAD, Aga Khan University, various international NGOs, national universities such as us, and also national NGOs as well. So when we were carrying out the work in 2018, looking at adolescent lives and transitions in urban slums in Dhaka, we found that one of the areas that we hadn't realized was so important was the importance of access to mobile phones and ICT technology. This was one big area where we were very surprised, and another was that of substance abuse. On substance abuse, our partner, the James P. Grant of Public Health, School of Public Health, has been working on that issue, and we chose to look more deeply into the issue of adolescents' use and access to both ICT in terms of internet and mobile phones. So my colleague Lopita will be making the presentation. I think I'll hand over to her. Thank you.
Lopita.
Thank you, Mahinapa. Thank you, Mahinapa. Thank you, everyone. I especially want to welcome and thank Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Women and Children's Affairs, Kazi Roshan Akhtar, because I know that at this very moment there is a lot going on regarding adolescents, in fact, under her ministry, and that unfortunately the times coincided and we can't be part of that and they can't be part of us. But hopefully, Madam Secretary is going to relay all the information that she finds interesting to the strategy, hopefully. Okay, so now I will share my screen. Okay, and voice and agency through use of ICT and mobile phones. We are so very pleased to have you with us. I would first like to thank GAGE, that is Gender and Adolescence Global Evidence for their responsive research funding opportunity for this project. So this was as Mahinapa said, the focus of this research came out of the wider GAGE research, and this was a fund that became available for qualitative research. My biggest thanks goes to the schools who allowed our intrusion, and to the wonderful, vivacious, and forthright young adolescents whom we had the pleasure to work with. And of course, to my team members who contributed in different ways to this research, through data collection, report writing, etc., and whom I represent today. I'm Lopita Haq. I'm Research Fellow at the Gender and Social Transformation Cluster at BIGD. The research on which this presentation is based took place between July 2019 and February 2020, just before the onset of COVID. Now, I must point out that even though this research was conducted just prior to the COVID situation, the implications have that much more significance and urgency now when all of us have to resort to digital means. Let me give you tell you briefly about the presentation today. I will first talk a bit about the broader context of digitization in Bangladesh. From there, we will get into the issue we selected for our research. Excuse me, the research sample and methodology. We will look at the indicators we used with reference to the prevalent context of adolescent voice and agency. After that, we will take a look at the findings and then on to conclusion and some takeaway points. So before we start on the research details and findings, I would urge you to pause to read what the children are saying about their existence and their future in this digital world. I think for some adults in Bangladesh, the digital world is a separate space. It is perhaps a tool of convenience, a tool for communication. But for most adults, it is quite alien from the digital world. Doing this research brought into sharp focus for us that the adolescents straddle both worlds very comfortably. They exist and operate in the virtual world as much, if not more, than they do in the physical world. They kept on reminding us that this is their existence. This is the way they will increasingly live their lives, and this is what they will have to learn to navigate. It is us adults who cannot adjust. For them, the borderline between these two worlds is indeed blurry. So, to lay out the broad context, we look at we look at some numbers about that gives us an idea about what digitization looks like in Bangladesh. So we find here that we can see here that there's a very high penetration of mobile phones and even of the internet. But what stands out is the 38% urban and rural divide in access to internet and 62% gender gap of the same. Now, why does this matter? Our previous BIGD research has shown that digital access is highly correlated with digital skills. That means lower access, lower skills. The wider the divide, the wider the difference in skills. The implication, thus, is that this inequality will also increase other forms of inequality. Now, the government has taken a stance to bridge this inequality through establishment of computer labs and multimedia classrooms in secondary schools throughout Bangladesh. We will learn more about that in the course of the presentation. For those of you who are interested, Bandbase has very detailed statistics on this issue about the multimedia classrooms and the computer labs. So, given this context, I will now venture into our research. Why are we doing this research? Given this context, we were curious to know about adolescent use of mobile phones and internet. Now, whatever little research that has been done on this issue in Bangladesh has mainly focused on health impacts, on excessive use, and the discourse is largely centered around harm. We wanted to conduct a research on its implications for adolescent voice and agency. So what is adolescent voice and agency? Voice and agency has been identified by GAGE as one of the 6 important domains of capabilities of adolescents. And it is defined as the ability of adolescents to meaningfully participate in household, school, and community life, which are key to them developing the skills required for political participation in adulthood. Sorry, excuse me. So let's talk about the research sample. Now, we wanted to address this issue of adolescent voice and agency across class, location, and gender. So we identified 4 kinds of schools that would allow us to differentiate between them. We used the school's fee structure, we used local knowledge, and also we used our connections to shortlist 12 schools. On this basis, on the basis of these characteristics, we had certain English medium schools to represent the higher socioeconomic group. Sorry. Certain Bengali medium schools to represent middle income groups, government schools located in lower income areas, which for the sake of convenience, we will call slum schools, and government schools in a couple of villages to represent a rural-based low middle income group. From the 12, we finally had the 4 schools we needed for the research. I will come back later to how we got to 4. Now, we took as our sample 64 male and female adolescents belonging to class 8. We selected class 8 mainly because students of this class are 14-year-olds, and 14-year-old is an age group which is kind of interesting because they are the cusp of transitioning from being young adolescents to being older adolescents. And also we found that this age group has been understudied in the literature. But here I must emphasize that issues for 14-year-olds is different from those of 15-year-olds or for 13-year-olds, and findings would certainly be different for even older and younger adolescents. Now, I just wanted to add that our proxies worked out. In the final selection, both parents of students of the English medium school were found to be working and engaged in high-powered jobs. Parents of the Bengali medium school were mostly in government service, or they were in clerical or administrative positions in a private service. Most of the mothers were not in jobs. Parents of the slum children's school were mostly daily wage workers, or they had small businesses. There were signboard painters, fish sellers, print workers, and so on. And some of the there were also transportation workers. And some parents of the rural school children were also had low income work, like they were also truck drivers, there were microbus drivers, but there were some families who were slightly better off with remittance from migrant family members. Now, more about our methodology. So what we did was, after shortlisting the 12 schools, we sent out letters explaining our research and asking for appointments when we could give a presentation of our research to the school authorities. Excuse me. We needed the commitment of the school authorities because it meant rearranging classes, taking responsibility, providing space, etc. Now, not all schools responded. Most did. Some of them spoke of their difficulty in rearranging classes or arranging for the children to stay back after school, or they were busy with exams or other engagements. But some schools responded positively. So ultimately, we were actually permitted to do the research by every school that we gave a presentation at, except for one English medium school. Now, just wanted to say in terms of doing research that English medium schools were more difficult to approach. In fact, when we piloted the research, we were able to go to every category of school except an English medium school. And while teachers and parents of class 8 students were also our respondents, the only group of parents we could not access belonged to the English medium school. Anyway, so we held the FGDs with boys and girls separately in each of the 4 schools as a first step using vignettes. I can talk about vignettes later if you want me to. From the FGD, we selected 3 boys and 3 girls with whom we held in-depth interviews. Then in each school, we held FGDs with parents of boys and girls. some separately and some together, depending upon their convenience. And we also held FGGs with class 8 teachers. Thank you. After these activities, we processed, we did preliminary data analysis, and then we went back to the schools and presented our findings to the whole of class 8. So it was not just the students that we had worked with, but the entire year, and which was a very interesting exercise. Teachers were also present at these events. Now, we had wanted to hold local community-based dissemination workshops as well, but unfortunately COVID intervened, and we had to drop the idea after conducting one such workshop in Cumilla. At that time, when COVID just started, we weren't sophisticated enough to hold webinars with community stakeholders. Okay, so these were the voice and agency indicators that we used to gather our data. And I want to spend a little bit of time here because these indicators we actually selected because we thought that they would represent, they would be more suitable for Bangladeshi adolescents, perhaps not adolescents all over the world. For example, we talked about we asked about developing interpersonal relationships. Now we know that in Bangladesh, there is very little opportunity for friendships or, well, relationships, yeah, maybe, but friendships between the opposite sex. And there's a lot of taboo around it. So we wanted to see whether they have gained any kind of agency or voice in terms of overcoming those social barriers. Accessing information, that is, of course, a precursor to voice. Ownership and access to mobile phones and other devices, and the use of internet. We really wanted, that was one of the key issues that we looked at, because that sort of set the ground for all the other indicators to make sense, to make meaning out, to get meaning out of them. And we wanted to see how much it varies across class or location or gender. Learning new skills was another indicator that we used, because access to new skills is something quite limited for Bangladeshi adolescents, and we wanted to see what kind of skills they're learning and what the variation is across the class, across class and location and gender. Contributing to household decisions. 14-year-olds are not expected to make any decisions. So any decision that they can make, we figured, was an enhancement to their voice and agency. Recognizing and mitigating online risks. This was indicated that actually became very important. And we will look at that quite a lot in detail later on. And lastly, connecting to larger virtual communities and movements. Now, this was important to us, one, because the social circle of girls, adolescent girls in Bangladesh, is quite limited. And so we wondered whether this kind of enhanced their social engagement in any form. But also specifically, we were looking at whether adolescents were engaging in movements, online movements. So, excuse me. Community participation is an indicator of adolescent voice and agency in general in research that is generally carried out. But we had to reconstitute these indicators to address voice and agency through ICT. So community participation transformed into involvement with online movements. I hope you're with me till now. Okay, so these indicators that we chose can be connected to the prevalent gender norms around voice and agency, which are often discriminatory. So, and these are facts that are not unknown to any of us, actually, but worth remembering as we see the results. So few girls and boys complete schooling. For girls, it's mainly because of marriage. For boys, it's mainly because of work. And in fact, the report 2019 report said that the early marriage has not declined since 2014. So 66% of girls get married before the age of 18. And that means that girls rarely get the opportunity to experience adolescence, to experience friendships and the wider world. Love marriages are not socially approved of, and after marriage, voice, particularly for girls, is said to be constrained. Now, you can see here Amin's 2015 research findings that says that more than 50% of the boys said, and 36% of girls said that men should have the final say in all matters. And there's other statistics, like, for example, in the same research, they found that 90% of the adolescents felt that women should obey their husbands, and 95% boys and 87% of the girls supported that obedience is valued by women. Then we know that girls' mobility is more restricted than boys' mobility, and research has shown that girls fear for their safety more than boys do, even though a lot of boys do fear for their safety as well. And lastly, I want to talk about a little bit about sexual and reproductive health education in the school curriculum, even though the government took the step to introduce it in the curriculum, but there was a lot of opposition from parents and also from teachers saying that it was an embarrassing topic. And this research found that parents, in fact, also believed that sexual and reproductive health education might actually increase sexual harassment. So on the one hand, we find that adolescents, the kind of like authentic sources of information around these issues for adolescents is constrained. On the other hand, we find that there is a lot of misinformation in the virtual world, which may not depict the kind of gender relations that we would want our children to grow up with, but that information is far more easily available to the children. Okay, so let's move on to our findings. Okay. So our research findings show that there is variation in ownership and access to digital devices and internet, which is not surprising. And we find that adolescents of higher socioeconomic group, that is the adolescents belonging to the English medium school, also own they're more likely to own their own devices, and they have other devices as well. They have internet in their home. They have internet in most of the places that they visit. And there's no discernible difference between access to devices and access to internet between boys and girls within this socioeconomic group. However, when you go to the other socioeconomic groups, the middle income, the lower income, or the rural groups, we find that there is gender difference. First of all, like all or most of these adolescent boys and girls, they rely on shared devices. This is irrespective of whether they're boys or girls. They rely on shared devices. So the devices might belong to their mother or father or brother or sister. Sometimes they also access laptops belonging to cousins and so on and so forth. Boys can also access their friends' devices, which the girls do not seem to have access to so much, because none of the girls really actually own their own mobiles, except for a few girls in the Bengali medium school. Okay. Moreover, we find that the adolescent boys can access Wi-Fi in public spaces, but this group actually relies much more. I mean, this group meaning the relatively lower socioeconomic groups actually rely more on mobile data. Now, we found that adolescents, they get lunch money. Both girls and boys get lunch money, and which they save, but only boys use it to buy mobile data, but girls don't. So we're wondering why that is so, and we found that mobile data is bought and loaded in shops. Now that means you have to have the phone with you, and the girls, they certainly cannot take their parents or their siblings' phone outside the house, and they really don't get to hang out with their friends. On the other hand, we have comments actually from the parents of the girls who say that one of them said that they only allow the daughter to use the phone in front of her. Another parent said that it doesn't matter whether she's in front of her or not in front of her. Her daughter is not allowed to spend a single second on the mobile phones. And this is from one of the mothers in the rural areas. On the other hand, we have boys who take their parents' mobiles or their siblings' mobiles, and they go out and hang out with other boys in public spaces where there's Wi-Fi. They use friends' mobiles. They all chip in, buy mobile data, and watch a movie together or watch something together. So that's why they are more likely to buy mobile data than girls. Girls rely on the data that their parents have bought and that their siblings have bought. So what we find is that apart from girls in the higher socioeconomic classes, all other girls have even less access to mobile and internet than their male counterparts. And on top of that, rural girls have least access to digital devices and the internet. Okay, so what is the deal with what is the implication of owning a device and sharing a device? We found that there are two major implications. One is about time spent on the devices, and the other is on freedom. So for those who own their own devices, that is mostly, but not all, but mostly the adolescents belonging to the English medium school. Because it is their device, they can spend more time on it. They have access to Wi-Fi, so it allows them to browse the internet for different purposes, and they do use it a lot for schoolwork, especially for doing research. Now, on the other hand, we find that okay, now they also, let me just finish with this group first. So they also have unsupervised, well, they can be supervised to a certain degree, but more access to to internet, which gives them the freedom to visit any site that they want. And their presence in the social media platforms is quite strong, not just on, they don't tend to use Facebook so much, but Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, they're there. So in contrast, we find that the adolescents who share devices actually have to snatch bits of time to use their phones. Because it's when the mom or the father comes back from work, or when their older siblings are not using it, so they use it for a little short while. And they rely on data, mobile data. So both of this, the limited access to the internet, and because of this, they have limited access to the internet. And what happens is that they use that short access mainly for entertainment purposes. In terms of the freedom, so we found that adolescents actually who share devices often watch what the owners watch, and they refrain from watching sites that the owners would not approve of, at least not they do it surreptitiously maybe, but they're not allowed to. So what happened, so for example, we found that all the students from the slum school watch a lot of Islamic videos and listen to a lot of waz. This is because when they go to YouTube, what pops up is what the owners have been watching. So this is something that they're watching, which can have, don't want to go into the implications of it, but positive, negative implications are there. Also, adolescents who use their older brothers' phones, they are more likely, or using the brother's phone was used by a lot of boys to tell us that how they first started watching pornography. So it is not that only this affects their viewing of pornography. We found that all boys and girls have watched it at the age of 14 and earlier for boys. And while boys have watched it much more frequent, well, they've watched it more than once. Girls said that they did not watch it more than once. That's something to think about. Okay, and another very important finding from the shared device was that a lot of them do not have their own Facebook or emo accounts. We found that this is true more for girls than boys, but we found that girls use their parents' Facebook account or emo accounts. And so one would expect that there is a great deal of monitoring going around there. That's what you would expect. But adolescents find ways and means, as we will see next. So these are the challenges that some of the adolescents talked about, mother not allowing to use the phone, or the phone being taken away on weekdays. But I want you to see this, the one in the middle, where to the girl who installs and uninstalls Messenger every single night after her mother comes back home to talk to her friends all night, and then she uninstalls it in the morning so her mother doesn't realize that she's on social media. So we might think that we are not, we are stopping access, but we may not be, and that may have implications as well. This is, I really want to highlight this. What this girl from the adolescent girl from the slum school is saying is not unique to her. There were others who were talking about the same thing, that they can't access material online. So for example, this girl, the school that she belongs to, doesn't have a science lab. So they can't do biology experiments or chemistry experiments. But those who have access to the internet can actually watch these experiments on YouTube, or they can watch lectures by teachers on YouTube. But not everybody has that access. So she has to rely on just what is written in her book. They've talked about this regarding math lessons, English lessons, and other various educational labs. Another important finding, I think, from this research was that establishing digital resources does not equal access. So we found that ICT labs are there, but a lot of times optimum utilization of these labs is not an option. Because in some cases we found that computers are not working, or computers are often shared in groups. So there's a physical kind of like a kind of infrastructural aspect to it. So like low connectivity or no internet connectivity. But there are also reasons other reasons that do not ensure equal access by boys and girls to the facilities that they have in their school. And we found that, for example, we found a teacher who feels that boys are more interested in computers. I mean, that's an assumption he's working with, is that boys are more interested in computers. They have better skills than girls. And so therefore they have more hands-on opportunity to use the computers when computers have to be shared in groups. But when we took the research back to that school, when the girls heard this, the girls were actually vehemently opposed this perception, because they said they too are very interested in learning computers. So that means what? That means that there are certain negative assumptions of gatekeepers that may result in restricting voice and agency. So we found that parents, nearly in every single FGD, we didn't have one with the English medium school parents, but in the other ones, the parents always drew a very negative relationship between their adolescent children and the use of mobiles and ICT. They do not think that this is a good combination. And this is, of course, partly due to the fact that they are unwilling to believe that adolescents use the internet for educational purposes. And of course, they are absolutely obsessed about the possible romantic relationships, especially that their girls can get in. And to much of the conversation with the parents in these FGDs was around their fears and their unwillingness to give access to the devices to the children. And they themselves actually said that they have to monitor their daughters' mobile phones and internet activity much more closely than of boys, because their daughters' actions have more to do with dignity and honor and dignity. And also we found that teachers may also have some biases, which can result in more opportunities for boys to use computers, etc. Okay, so from here, I want to go talk a little bit about what are they using it for? What are the children using internet for? And here you can see, this is only a few of them, but as you can see that, yes, they're gaming, there's no doubt about it, and they're TikTok videos, but they're also looking at cooking and handicrafts. These are very popular. Educational apps are really very popular, and they do a lot of YouTube searches for science projects when there are science fairs in schools, a variety, and they also manage to they realize, I think, come to realizations of what they like doing, certain hobbies that they like doing, certain passions or talents that they have, that they can actually find out more information from, see the possibilities of that from. So we found that, they're confident to show their skills and discover hidden talents. We found girls in the rural areas learning dance moves and performing them in weddings, even though they're not that keen on uploading them onto the internet, that they're quite aware of. And they are able to form and express opinions of their own opinions, yes. Traditional gender roles, for example, there were so many boys across class who actually are interested in cooking, and they tried cooking. Girls, of course, but also boys, which is for Bangladesh, this is quite a turnaround. They use it to improve areas of weakness, especially in English, math, science. And while students of the higher social, students of the English medium school may be able to download many more apps, the other adolescents from the other groups, it's not as if they know about these apps. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't access it, but they do watch YouTube and lessons in YouTube to improve the areas of weaknesses. And research has found, Amin and Masunas, I think in 2020, they did a research which found that coaching classes in English and math had a big impact in terms of empowerment of adolescents in the research. Expanding network of friends. We found that, and we found also, of course, a lot of talk about relationships. The adolescents were very clear on, the kind of about fake relationships, about the lack of longevity of these relationships, about the chances of being duped by boys and girls, and so they are quite aware that of of what could be the dangers. I want to share with you this quote from this boy in the slum school. I think it was a takeoff from a Bangladeshi phrase, in movies, early movies, they used to say, Akash ar batash amader bhalobashar sakshi rakhche, and all very emotional. So he said that, previously skies and winds were the witness of love, but now it's chats and screenshots. So, they're funny, and they're funny. They're very aware, they're keenly aware of the misuse of the agency that they have now to actually build on interpersonal relationships. We found that adolescents are very, very aware of online movements. Most adolescents know of the movements that happen in Bangladesh. For example, the Safe Road movements. They commented on it. They shared videos on it, and they were really involved in the whole process. They were very aware of the Nusrat murder case, where a girl in the madrasa was assaulted by her principal, and then she was burned. And so they were very vocal about those things. And we found that, in fact, the adolescents are participating in a lot of household decisions. And even when it comes to purchasing online, we found that, for example, a boy in the slum school who searched for and helped to decide on a blender for his mother, or another boy from the same school who actually searched and bought his sister a hair straightener, which she really wanted. Along with this, I mean, we found, that they're gaining some respect apparently from parents for the information that they have and the technical support that they can give to them. Although rural, adolescent girls from the rural schools said that their opinions are not really, they get irritated, the adults get irritated when they want to express an opinion. This exposure, these skills seem to be widening the adolescents' aspirations as well. Here you can see this boy from the slum school who wants to be a graphic designer, and this boy from the rural school who is actually visualizing what kind of a business he wants to have using internet. Now, we found that girls do not really connect their aspirations directly with the internet, but as some of the girls said that, there is so much time left for us to decide, why should we decide now? So that's there as well. This is one thing that we were actually quite shocked, or maybe shouldn't have been shocked by, was how common the experience of online harassment was, and the types of harassment that the adolescents identified. So there were some which were more common than others, where, for example, what they call blackmail, where there's an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend or a boy or a girl who is interested in you, but you're not interested in them, who's like posting pictures or threatening to post pictures, pictures which are often actually photoshopped, so that you will be shamed in front of your family or in your in front of your peers. And there's some variation on the types of risks that are perceived by the different socioeconomic groups, but I will not go into that. What I want to talk about is that we found that predominantly this kind of harassment is faced by girls, but boys are also vulnerable. This one boy was talking about how his hujur wanted him to post an inappropriate picture of him and send it to him. He took care of that. So we found that despite the fact that there are lots of issues of harassment or risks, adolescents are developing skills to minimize their vulnerability and to control their own risky behavior online. For example, You have adolescents who were who used to accept any friends because they wanted to show off how many friends they have. But now they've realized that that is very dangerous, and they have to make sure who these people are who wants to be friends. And so quite a few of the adolescents across class and across gender know how to block or unfriending and filtering and these sort of things. We found that the English medium school children were had spoke of certain measures that the other children did not talk about. For example, privacy modes or switching apps or reporting. And it's interesting that they are the ones who know who interact with the virtual, so more capable of minimizing their vulnerability. So sometimes at the cost of the adolescents themselves. I mean, this definitely prevents adolescents from developing personal agency that would minimize their vulnerability to online risks. So the conclusion. So what can we say in conclusion? One is that yes, adolescents spend time on social media to prove of, but there are so many more things that adolescents can do. There are so many skills that they are picking up. Their knowledge is enriched to a degree that is unfathomable for people like me. Their choices and the opportunities have expanded exponentially, but this is only true for a few. And the vast majority of the adolescents are left out. And of that vast majority, girls are most likely to be left behind, and rural girls even more so. And so the potential is left unfulfilled. So digital divides will lead, well, that's the opinion I'm forming from the research, will lead to deepening socioeconomic divides. They will lead to deepening gender divides. They will probably lead to other forms of marginalizations that we haven't thought of yet. Especially in the time of COVID, the digital divide will have and already has had devastating effect. This is not to say that adolescents, especially 14-year-olds, are going to be left to their own devices to fend for themselves. No, they need guidance. They need to be steered into directions. They need to be taught about risks and taking right decisions, but they do not need to be prevented from having access. In fact, we believe that what this research has shown us is that it is access to devices and internet that can bridge the gaps, the inequalities that already exist between the different groups of adolescents, whether because of the socioeconomic backgrounds or whether because of their gender and the privileges or the limitations related to that. It might actually help to bridge these divides and can play a significant role in leveling the playing field, at least to some degree. I will quickly end with some takeaway points that we think that the role that gatekeepers can perform, which will build a safe environment for adolescents' mobile internet use. Parents need to be digitally literate, and to ensure that that is a task. They need to be oriented to the positive links between education and internet. They need to be oriented to online risks and risk management. And they also need to understand that they should give equal access to their sons and daughters. Secondly, schools, we found, have an enormous role to play. We found that schools play a role in introducing adolescents to different websites where they can benefit from in terms of their personal development, as well as for their education and general knowledge. And in encouraging research, I think the schools have a very strong role to play. Teaching about online risks and violence and skills to counter them is another very important space where they can do a lot of work. And in fact, there might be rules and regulations about not accepting online harassment, at least when it is within the school group or the space. And they have a strong role in enhancing voice and agency on social and global issues. The government has been doing a tremendous amount, and I think it has laid the ground for the foundation for more to be built on. Like, for instance, the teacher training. I mean, we found that in schools, only the ICT teacher knows anything about ICT, anything about computers, anything about online resources and materials. But if all teachers could be brought in, then ICT could enrich whatever subject that they are actually learning about. And the government, if possible, could take measures to prevent underage children's access to age and appropriate material and protect them from online risks. So thank you very much. I am a researcher. I know that that is my expertise. I don't know how all these things that we have talked about in the last few points are going to be achieved, but I'm hoping that the panelists who are here with us today will have something to say about that. So thank you for bearing with me.
Thank you very much, Lupita. You're just 5 minutes over, so that's quite impressive. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. We started 5 minutes late, so that I think that's fine. Great, thank you. I think this has been very rich presentation, very rich research. I'm sure we'll have a lot to reflect on and really think about what does it all mean. What does it really mean? How do we understand, interpret these results, which can really help us in terms of policy and designing interventions, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what we are really interested in. I think the way I'll basically, kind of invite the sort of discussants is to first get a bit of a global perspective. So maybe ask Sylvia to talk a bit around, how does the findings that we are finding here, how does it relate in the global context, and perhaps bring in some of the global evidence in terms of, interventions that have worked in terms of addressing some of the challenges that we have identified. And then I'll move to basically requesting Jannatul Firdaus and then Dr. Anand Raihan, essentially to talk about digital innovation. So what type of digital innovation has some promise in terms of, again, addressing some of the challenges and realizing some of the opportunities, because I think this whole, I think the biggest takeaway theme of this, of the research that we have done is that there is a big message of opportunity and hope in terms of how we can leverage the power of sort of digital access and sort of digital futures, if we can really get our acts together. So it would be really good to hear from Jannatul Firdaus and Dr. Anand Raihan about the digital innovation possibilities there. And then we'll move to hearing from Sabrina Shahid. She's the principal of Sir John Wilson School, essentially on the school perspective. And again, of course, I know you come, from a very well-known English medium school, but you're an educator. So it'd be good if you can really step back and take sort of more of a more comprehensive perspective in terms of, how schools should be thinking about some of these findings, and what messages you may have for us. And then finally, we move to Mr. Musharraf Hussain Bhuiya to really reflect on the policy. What are the types of some of the policy thinking that would be important here? I know he has been deeply involved in terms of the digital Bangladesh work when he was the cabinet secretary, and from BIGD he is deeply involved in working with the government to sort of set up a digital strategy primer. So I think it would be really useful to hear his views. And then finally, we'll have question answer and move to the Honorable Secretary. So I'll start off with Sylvia. Please go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to participate to this panel. Thank you, Lupita, for your very interesting presentation, and Maheen particularly for presenting the Gender and Adolescence Global Evidence GAGE program. Yes, I think the global perspective is critical here. And I find this research very timely and very relevant in the context of the current pandemic, as Lopita, you mentioned, particularly in your introduction and in your conclusions as well, notwithstanding the fact that this research was done in, or started in 2019 and finished before the COVID-19 pandemic. I think it is very timely and very relevant to the current context. So I'll briefly discuss three main reflections in the time I have allocated. So linking to COVID-19, your data provides evidence on the risks that ICT inequality might bring, and the possibility of not only creating kind of new forms of marginalization, but also increasing the inequalities amongst the adolescent age group. So, for example, we know that in terms of access to internet, and your data kind of reaffirmed this, that adolescents belonging to the higher socioeconomic groups have unlimited access to the internet, be that at home, which is obviously critical, and I'm sure has been critical during lockdowns and school closures, but equally when they venture kind of outside of the home and are able to access Wi-Fi sort of wherever they go. And this is not the case for other categories of students. What the implications of this are in the current context, both for learning continuity during school closures, and we know that Bangladesh has is having one of the most prolonged, or is amongst the countries with the most prolonged school closures. So how that bears on learning continuity during the current school closures, as well as what the implications of that is for when schools reopen. And there will be varying degrees of how students have managed to keep up with their material if that had been provided online. I think it's critical to understand. So how that bears a role for catch-up courses when schools reopen, I think is very important. As you mentioned, we also know, and I think it's critical to underline in the current context, that just sort of dishing out and delivering hardware interventions or very attractive high-tech options are not applicable to every context. So we know that at the height of the pandemic, 1.6 billion learners were out of school. And whilst many transitioned to high-tech options, other countries and other contexts decided to go more for sort of low-tech or even no-tech learning options that I think worked very, very well in certain contexts. So I think that's an important consideration to bear in mind. My second point is that I noted with great interest the findings around inequitable access to mobile phones across class, location, and gender. I think you mentioned a 38% rural and urban divide in access to mobile phones, and a much higher divide related to gender. And that the quality of access, which I found very novel, is that the quality of access also depends whether mobile phones are personal and so can be freely used to navigate, or whether they're shared devices. I think you mentioned parents and siblings, so shared amongst the household. With regards to risks as well, security risks and risks of privacy, I wonder whether potentially in future rounds of research, it would be interesting to investigate if there were any positive repercussions of this. So what the implications are of a shared Facebook account, for example, if there are any, if you can mitigate some security risks or cyberbullying that might otherwise occur that way, I think is a very interesting and possibly less researched aspect. As well as teasing out, obviously, the more kind of negative correlations of a shared device, particularly on voice and agency. So whether there are some very clear exclusions that adolescents face in terms of broader civic participation, or adolescent groups that they are not able to access because they are sharing their device within the home and navigating the same websites And I think your paper mentioned, watching the same videos as their parents or navigating the same websites. So I think that's a very interesting point. My final point relates to girls, adolescent girls only, and the fact that they are facing, as your research found, kind of twofold negative biases from their uptake of ICT, both from their parents as gatekeepers of their access, out of fear of tainting their daughters, as well as from teachers who tend to prioritize boys when it comes to ICT related skills and subjects. So, and we know that this is a global phenomenon, and it is not exclusive to the Bangladesh context. So that girls and women face a learning crisis, and that this crisis is a crisis also in accessing quality opportunities in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subjects, so STEM subjects, which are traditionally ascribed and dominated by boys. And this leads girls also to achieve lower levels of digital skills in these subject and these content areas. So, and this sadly, perhaps not surprisingly, mostly affects the most marginalized girls. However, this is a tremendous problem also because achievement in STEM subjects goes beyond the digital access and awareness that it might bring, but it's also that you hone skills applicable across the education cycle. So thinking laterally, problem solving, kind of relying on innovation, and these skills are so important in our age, which is dominated by technological advances. So having and sort of curating the skills to operate, use, and create technology is ever more critical for women's education, women and girls' education, but also to their voice and empowerment and future employment prospects. So I think it would be very, very welcome to see some, and perhaps we can talk about this later as well, but some very tangible policy recommendations around efforts to prepare girls and young women to equally participate in this workforce, including in STEM fields, in order to accelerate a more equitable workforce, an employment workforce. And I repeat that this is certainly a global issue, and not singular to the Bangladeshi context, but I think it's something worth discussing quite tangibly.
Great.
I think I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sylvia. Just being aware of time, we're almost about 10 minutes late, so maybe we all try and speed up a bit and try and ensure that we finish on time. So I'd like to request, I think this is a great what you said, Sylvia, in terms of really focusing on the education domain. I think is really, really important in terms of this research. What does it mean for the educational domain and what type of innovations are possible there? And I think our next discussant, Jannatul Firdaus, she's a national consultant, educational innovation for Aspire to Innovate. So I think this could be a great topic for you to shed some light on in terms of the educational sector innovation through digitization that I know A2I is working a lot on. So if you could shed light on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Imran Bhai. So that was a very important research according to our present condition and the need of the adolescent in this pandemic. We know that our schools are closed and adolescents are remained at home and they're spending time with the device. So this is a very important area now. So thanks to Lopita for his tremendous presentation and also for the very informative research. I found one slide very important, that is the indicator for the agencies. You have mentioned some customized indicator for Bangladeshi context, that is interpersonal relationship, learning new skills, access to information, contribution to domestic activities, online risk, and maybe another one is connecting with virtual community. So I found these things very important for designing or thinking about innovations for the adolescents. Maybe you know, we have a platform for adolescents called Connect. In Bangla, it is Kishor Batayon, that is supported by ICT Division and Ministry of Education. So we have tried to focus this kind of personal relation, like life skills areas, new books, to comics, science-based experiments. So we have tried to put this kind of contents in this platform, and till now we have around 3 million members. Now it is really a big platform for the adolescents. And in a pandemic, as I have mentioned, that the schools are closed and they are spending time at home, and parents are very tensed about them, what they're doing with their devices, because many parents told me that we don't want to allow device in the normal situation, but now we are giving this device willingly because they are staying at home, they don't anything to do, so they are willingly giving device to the adolescent. At the same time, they are tensed. So what they will do with these devices? So from the education and the connect perspective, and also to think about adolescents, we have developed several courses through our platform and through the Facebook. So if they are connected through our platform, or our if they're connected our Facebook page, they will automatically they will connect with these courses like mental counseling program. We have a mental counseling program called Alapon. That is a very popular program among adolescents, and we have done this program with certified counselors, and we have a filmmaking course that is that's go live with their with our Facebook page. We have a mobile app development program, and we have developed quiz on these things. Though adolescents are love to participate, we have encouraged them to be more engaged with these programs. So in this pandemic, we have tried to reach more from ICT division, and we have tried to engage more to the adolescent. You know, I have just said some of our programs, but you will not believe that though we are not able to count the unique view, but in total we have reached around 5 million people through this program, and that is huge. We don't know about the unique view, actually. I agree, but the total reach is 5 million, and that is huge. And we are trying to be more innovative for the adolescents, and to engage them more, in the just few months before pandemic, we have designed a full Bandhu competition, that is a quiz based Mukti Juddho that was based on our Victory Day. So we have designed so many quiz programs to engage more adolescents in these platforms. So one basic thing is that you have also mentioned your presentation that yes, the parents and the gatekeepers are have a negative feeling about using device, because you know that a mindset is a very impact level situation. So we need, if we want to change it, we have to provide many input here. After that we can have a good impact. So if we want to change their mind, or if we want to remove their negativity, so we need to, I think we need to design more engagement program for the adolescent. They need to engage more. From the Ministry of Education, or here we have our sir from Malta. We need to design more more project-based program. I know that the Ministry of Education is introducing project-based learning for the adolescent, I mean for the secondary level students. So if we can design more projects, more assignment-based, more engagement for the adolescent, they will look for these things. They will obviously, if we give them a problem, they will search it in internet first. So they will make a relationship with the internet, and at the same time parents will aware about these things, that they're doing an assignment, they're doing great, though it is an assignment from their teacher, from their schools. So this kind of thing will make a change in the mindset of the parents. So we should. Thank you very much,
Anna. So I think that was really useful. I think in particular, I just want to draw attention to this one very important point that you made, which is the fact that I think during COVID, and this is the kind of opening up of an opportunity, because I think during COVID period, some of this gatekeeping relationship has shifted, and by necessity, this has shifted. It has not really opened up, but it has shifted. And how do we take advantage of the shifts through, thoughtful programming and thoughtful intervention is really the most important point. So I think that was really, really insightful and very, very useful. Thank you very much. Let me now move to Dr. Ananda Raihan, CEO of iSocial. So again, Raihan, if you could really focus on innovation and what type of innovation can really help us, perhaps take advantage of some of the new shifts that's happening right now.
Thank you, Imran Bhai. Honorable Secretary, today's chief guest, panelists, researchers, and the participants. I would like to congratulate the DIGD for an excellent research, and it captures all of the aspects connected to agencies of adolescents, and also with a gender lens, which is very important. I'd like to divide my thoughts into two parts. One is the access issue, and also the possible intervention connected to digital devices. So I'd like to pick up from the point where Dr. Imran left. The changing dynamics of the parents' attitudes toward access to digital device by the adolescents, both girls and boys. It shifted because that was an impediment, imperative to ensure access. But unfortunately, this access was not possible to ensure for the large portion of the school-going children. And the obvious reason is that the limited access to digital device, and in other cases, along with the access to device, access to quality internet. I think this is an opportunity for us and for other countries in the similar situation. The opportunity is that whether it's a time for thinking of an intervention, when we can ensure access to digital device for both girls and boys who are going to schools. Probably you know already that there is a post-pandemic ICT roadmap where 16 domino effect agenda have been identified. And a few agenda are connected to universal access. So there are three access we're talking about. One is access to device. Second is access to quality internet, and access to digital literacy. If we can combine these three together, it's not only about the addressing the issues of adolescents, but as a whole for each of the citizens of the country. The question is that what kind of device is appropriate for what age? When we say adolescent, it's from 10 years to 19 years. The need and aspirations are not same for each age group within the adolescent category. So while this programmatic approach is interesting, which might require close to $3 billion in next 3 to 4 years, which is government is planning. So this kind of intervention might solve the access issue, but the question will come that whether this access would really can solve the issues presented in this particular research, and that will be interesting to observe down the line. On the aspect of the framework of agency, I'd like to also propose one more indicator, and this is access to opportunity, because that is important probably for adolescent girls and boys to know what opportunities are out there for them, so that they can access them and they can change their lives, especially who are at the bottom of the pyramid. The other issues I'd like to mention here is the risk, the components identified in this research. The screen time of is an important issue actually, which is connected to health risk and also the addiction and the depression. I think we need to really look at this aspect very seriously. The screen time addiction is not only applicable for adolescents, it is also applicable for citizens of all age. And this is interrupting productivity in many cases, interrupting focus or the concentration. The attention span issue is there now. And whether when we're talking about access to digital device and internet, whether we are bringing all the adolescents into these particular issues, screen time and health risk and mental health risk particularly. So the intervention probably we need to think in a controlled environment, which was mentioned by Dr. Lopita in her findings and the recommendations. I think we really need to, when we promote a program of universal access, I think the access should be controlled according to age group, so that we can keep away the children which is not from things which are not age appropriate, and that is possible to do centrally at the state level. And of course, the role of parents and the schools have been identified very rightly in the finding. I'd like to conclude with the application of the digital device to enhance the opportunities by using the devices. And Sylvia rightly mentioned that it's not only about giving access. Probably we need to focus on blended learning approach, where there is offline activities are combined with the online activities or activities using devices, and not necessarily it is mobile phone devices. So we should not be probably blind about providing access to smartphone. It may not solve the problem of access to education, because the global studies also show that the most of the time are spent online or on mobile phone on entertainment rather than education. So other kind of devices and control access probably do a better job, and we can really promote the adolescents agency in that way. So I'd probably stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to alert everyone, we are 20, almost 15 minutes late, more than that. So I think we'll have to extend later, but let's try to keep the speed on and try and shorten. So I'd like to now invite Sabrina Shahid, Principal Sir John Wilson School, for her thoughts from a school perspective and an educationist perspective.
Thank you so much for inviting me to take part in this very important panel discussion among such distinguished panelists. Firstly, I would like to thank BIGD and GAGE for undertaking such qualitative research on this burning topic, effect of ICT and mobile phone use on our young generation. Thank you, Lopita Hawk, for your comprehensive report on this topic, which has highlighted a great deal of important issues that exist in our present society. There's no doubt in my mind that ICT literacy and mobile phone use can open the door of enormous possibilities. Surely there are a few drawbacks, and now our target is how we can turn these disadvantages into our advantages, especially for our young generation. In my opinion, first of all, we need to change our stereotype mindset as, from the parents' point of view, from the adults' point of view, about how these powerful tools can be used. We all know that young minds are very impressionable. When young people are dominantly exposed to violence, unkind and harmful activities, obviously it creates negativity in their minds, and they also get desensitized. It's very hard to change any mindset once it get used to something. We know that there is always going to be something bad alongside something good. We can only ask someone to make the choice between these two. But what they choose to do is entirely up to them. They can make the right choice or they can make the wrong one. So we can only concentrate on guiding the young minds to aware them about the right choices. We can help them to be aware of the positive impact of using mobile phones and ICT rather than using these tools as for unproductive work like bullying, cyberbullying, harassing, and spreading negativity. Schools or any educational institute can play a great role in setting up these mindsets and giving the adolescents the chance to make up these, to make these choices actually. I can talk to you about my school, what we are doing at Sir John Wilson School. We introduced ICT literacy for our students from the very beginning of their school life, that is from playgroup. However, we wanted to implement the notion of internet safety when they are in class 3 and 4, aged between 9 and 10 years old. Generally, that is the time that we have seen the students start showing interest to browse different sites, and especially shows a great deal of interest about different social media platforms like Twitter, Snapchat, Imo, Instagram, Facebook. We also introduced Brave Man campaign by CMMS, Center for Man and Masculinity Studies, as we wanted to expose our students to gender equality at the stage of class 5 and 6, when students are aged between 11 and 12. At this phase, we wanted to make sure that students understand the concept of rights and respect regardless of gender. This, I think, is a very good combination, as we usually see a lot of gender-based violence using these tools, internet and social media and mobile phone. I must say that we have had wonderful partners like Grameen Phone and South Tech, who have launched awareness programs in our schools to make sure that students are aware of the potential of ICT literacy and the world of internet as well as the dangers of using them. Internet safety has been our first priority so far, but we continue to expand our topic to explore the possibilities of using ICT in their skill building activities. Our students have always been encouraged to use their ICT literacy to expand their knowledge and experience. I'm very happy to say that our students have already created podcasts and different charitable and awareness campaigns using the social media platform. So at the end, I would like to say that we need to show the young generation how these powerful tools can be used for their own skill development and for the benefit of others. We need to guide them to understand how the access of information can become their weapon to expand their knowledge, to raise their voice, express their opinion and ideas, and eventually become part of the global community. So I think, what I take from this report that Lupita has provided us is a lot of things that we, as a school, we can implement, and there's just enormous possibilities if we can put them in the right frame of mind, and the framework has to be built properly. So let's see what we can do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sabrina Shahid. I think it was really good to listen to what you're doing in your school, but I think we should also be thinking whether there are opportunities for some kind of peer-based model across different types of schools to try and see whether we could create, more peer-based learning.
Absolutely.
Across different types of schools to try and bridge some of this gap. There may be other approaches here that one may basically think, and I think the whole, and this doesn't have to be face to face. It can be network in a sort of remote way. But I think peer-based learning and peer-based models does have a great possibilities here, and with the ICT platform, I think this opens up a huge world of possibilities. Great. So I would now like to request Musharraf Hossain Bhuiya, Senior Advisor to BIGD and former Cabinet Secretary, Government of Bangladesh, to perhaps reflect briefly, maybe in 5 minutes or 6 minutes, if you can, Musharraf Bhai, on the sort of, what does it all mean for policy? And if you could really, maybe tee it up for our honorable chief guest later to really, conclude. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Imran Bhai. I thank the research team for the wonderful work and the elaborate presentation. And I also thank the guests, particularly Qazi Roshan Akhtar, Secretary MOCA, for joining us. The study has undoubtedly unfolded a number of relevant and useful issues. I find the findings and recommendations constructive. I believe the policy brief that has been produced will be helpful for the policymakers and other partners. Let me focus on a few points briefly. It's noteworthy that ICT education is compulsory from class 6, but the access is still limited. However, the quality of access is important. Like other areas, we often ignore the quality issue in digital connectivity. As the study reveals, dependence on shared devices involves additional challenges, particularly for the less advantaged socioeconomic group, more significantly the adolescent girls. Quite understandably, it means less time and less freedom. The role of gatekeepers is a tricky issue. We cannot undermine the need for parental guidance and also the supervision of teachers, but it's also important to ensure that this guidance is sensible, pragmatic, forward-looking, and constructive, and not suppressive and prejudicial. And we understand the government policies and programs cannot dictate parental guidance. But I believe parent-teacher meeting that are held in the schools can partly address the issue. but the government can consider including this in the core teacher training programs for secondary school teachers. It's evident that there are various dimensions of the use of mobile phone and internet by the adolescents: infrastructure, skills, health, education, social norms, etc. So different ministries of the government are involved in the process, such as ICT division, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the secondary and higher education division of the Ministry of Education. And if we look at the matter from adolescent rights perspective, Ministry of Women and Children Affairs has a role to play. And I believe Secretary Mocha will reflect on this point. The study rightly identifies our today's issue as a potential new form of marginalization. It also, I also feel that it needs consideration at the planning stage. I have no hesitation to say that we are not always diligent enough at the preparation stage of the project cycle. You have noticed that the Honorable Prime Minister probably yesterday expressed her displeasure at the delay in implementation projects. My understanding is one of the main reasons for delay in project implementation is the weakness in project preparation. So there are weaknesses, inherent weaknesses in the project. So if the project document is deficient and defective, they need revision, leading to cost overrun and time overrun. I would request, it's a complex issue. This part of the coordination is a complex issue. So I would like to request Secretary Mocha to work closely with other relevant ministries in this respect. Multimedia classrooms and digital labs are undoubtedly very innovative and constructive initiatives of the government, but I am curious to understand more how they are working at the ground level, at the delivery level. I believe government can undertake some in-depth evaluation, comprehensive countrywide evaluation of these interventions. Finally, government, of course, can play an important role in terms of policy support, in terms of coming up with innovative projects, as I mentioned, and but government alone cannot address this issue. There's a matter of awareness building at the community level. And in this area, government needs the support of other actors, particularly the CSOs and NGOs in building awareness. And government they can work together with the government, not only in policy, taking appropriate policies, but also their proper implementation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mashoor Bhai. I think you as usual from unexpected from you, Mashoor Bhai. I think you raised a host of really important policy ideas here, which I think will really now help us to try and kind of perhaps get to some forward-looking conclusion. But before I hand over to our honorable chief guest, I think there are some questions we have, and maybe spend maybe 5 to 7 minutes, and I'll ask Mahinapa to perhaps moderate this session, if you can, in terms of, are there some key questions that you may be able to cluster and important ones that you could facilitate?
Thank you, Imran. And there are a few questions and comments that have come up. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay. So one is, as discussants have also raised, Mr. Faiz Ahmed raised the issue of physical and mental health risks of the use of devices. So that is something that has come up also in the, let's say, the discussion offline. There's also the issue that Mr. Zayed Kayan has raised of how to control or how to educate youth about avoiding spreading misinformation, false information, or harmful videos. I think there's a question which Lopita might want to address, which Manika Shaha raised, of how the 7 indicators of voice and agency were developed. And Suborno Cumilla has raised a number of very interesting questions. One, a comment that maybe she would like to come online and discuss, is the use of silence as agency. I think, you know, what the adolescents are saying and not saying is also as a sign of agency. And she had some questions about, you know, we know that practices of love marriages are increasing, whereas in the presentation we're saying the norm is still that this is not considered to be acceptable. So Lopita might want to just briefly talk about the difference between the norm and the practices.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mahinab. I think, you know, I mean, in these type of sessions, you know, we get lots of comments which, you know, we can have an opinion on, but, you know, I would really like to ensure that we are basing ourselves on the research we have done. And some of the questions you are asking are going to be very useful for us in terms of, you know, perhaps new research or looking at our current research differently. So I don't think, you know, there's a lot to, you know, really kind of comment, because I don't think we are in the business of opinions. We're in the business of creating evidence. However, I think that the question around the indicator development, I think, is a very important methodical one. So Lopita, maybe you want to reflect on that. And then I forget the name, Mahina, but you mentioned someone. It's really interesting from a methods point of view, this whole, you know, because, you know, one of the method challenge here is that, you know, how do we ensure the, you know, the kind of the social biases, the expected answers that people would usually give. You know, are there some methods that, you know, in terms of understanding silence, for instance? It'd be really good to, as sort of researchers, I think would be really interested to hear a bit on that. But Lopita, why don't you take the first one?
Yeah, so thank you for the questions. In terms of the indicators, now literature on adolescence and adolescents we have standardized indicators for different aspects of adolescent capabilities. So particularly, GAGE has a whole list of indicators that are used. So from those indicators, we selected indicators that we thought would be relevant. And of course, we can't look into everything. And I must address something in relation to this, which also responds to another question, is that, you know, we haven't talked about mental health, we haven't talked about psychosocial well-being, we haven't talked about education. That's because, you know, in the GAGE, when I first said that voice and agency in the GAGE definition is only one of 6 domains. So there is a separate domain for education, a separate domain for psychosocial well-being. So, and they have their separate indicators. So we very consciously had to limit our work on the indicators around voice and agency. And for example, there were some indicators that we did not take, or some indicators that we introduced, as for example, action. Accessing information might not be an you know, indicator for agency for 14-year-olds, because, you know, in some countries that is not an issue. But in Bangladesh, thought about it. I mean, of course, we also did our pilots. So the pilots gave us an idea about what children are doing and cannot, you know, do and cannot do, and that also shaped our ideas about what indicators we want to follow.
Thank you very much, Lopita. And anyone who is, you know, interested more in terms of, you know, how these indicators have been developed, you know, how we have adapted them in the Bangladesh context, please and I'm not saying this, I'm really, really genuinely saying this. We really want to invite research-based conversation and engagement. So if you do have questions and critiques, that you want to really discuss, please get in touch with us. I mean, Lopita has led this work. Get in touch with Lopita. I'm sure she'll be really happy to sort of engage on this. And maybe we can kind of put her. We'll get in touch with you in case you want a further conversation on this. But maybe quickly, maybe 2-3 minutes. If someone talked about silence and how do we research silence. I'm really interested in this whole topic, but maybe somebody could just give us a bit of a teaser on this.
If Suborna, if you'd like to say something, are you still there?
She may have left.
She may have left, but we'll be in touch with her.
Okay, we'll definitely.
Oh no, she's here. She's here.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Fascinating. It was a fascinating research, and I look forward to receive the research report or document that you have already written, and also it's very relevant to my research and my question. I had a question that on silence, because in my research I found that agency often is asserted through silence by the adolescents. I looked at middle-class youth experience of shame around sexuality, and I found that they often use silence to get what they want. For instance, I interviewed a 17-year-old boy who keeps stealing condoms from his father, and he thought that it's good that parents don't talk about it. Parents feel shame about it. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for him to access condoms. So I was wondering, how did you address these kinds of silence when you conducted your research? Did you find any kind of similar findings or?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Shubhana. I think that's an excellent question. Lupita, would you like to do it very quickly if you have anything?
Yeah,
or maybe,
no, it'll be very quick because that's something that I
further.
haven't really thought about. So Suborna, I would love to talk to you about this at length, actually. I'm really interested in your research, and maybe we can have a chat, and then maybe I can use that lens to analyze the data we have. That lens has not been, that lens is going to be very useful, I think. So we can have a chat later.
Yeah, we should do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shubhana, for raising that. So fantastic. We are still delayed, but I think we're not doing too badly. So really sorry, honorable chief guest, and extremely grateful for your patience, that you're here despite all the business that's going on right now. So would love to hear from you right now, your reflections, and perhaps what I would be really interested in this whole adolescent strategy work that your ministry is undertaking, and how do you see the work that we are doing, this research, how can this contribute, and do you have any suggestions for us in terms of what other ways in which we should be thinking about future research around adolescence as well? Thank you very much. Sir, I think your microphone is on mute. Thank you. Yes, we should. Oh no, it's gone on mute again. It unmuted, went back on mute. Thank you. Yes, I think yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Moderator, respected former Cabinet Secretary and Senior Advisor, BIGD, Mr. Musharraf Hossain Bhuiya, sir. dear research fellows, media professionals, and distinguished participants, Assalamu alaikum and very good evening. First of all, I'd like to convey my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to the organizers for inviting me. And indeed, it's a great pleasure for me to be with you and have an opportunity to share some ideas about an important issue that is adolescent voice and agency through ICT and mobile phone use. Actually, in human life, adolescence is a transitional stage of physical and psychological development and very much associated with the teenage years. And I should say, to address this group, today's discussion is very much important and relevant also. According to your research, digitalization in Bangladesh looks like a huge number of mobile subscribers and internet users increased from 31 million to 110 million in 8 years, but unequal access to ICT, that is 38% urban rural and 62% gender gap in internet use. And in your paper, it is also mentioned the question that is, what are the implications, both positive and negative, of mobile phone and internet use for adolescent voice and agency? And it is very good to know that you explore the difference in these implications between adolescent boys and girls, between adolescents of well-off families and relatively poorer families, and between adolescents living in Dhaka city and those in rural regions. And another important issue that the study shows that you mentioned in the study also seeks to identify and understand the concerns of parents and teachers regarding risks such as cyberbullying, harassment, and the perceived social and moral degradation of the youth. And that is the important issues on which we should put emphasis. And I want to say that the vital role of parents, family members, and the role of educational institutions is very important in this regard. And also some important findings, and that is boys are more privileged than girls in using digital devices. That is, there is a gender gap in using ICT. And parents are unwilling to believe that adolescents are used of the internet for educational purposes. Actually, their concern is that whether their children are using it properly in the right way, whether their children are being victimized or harassed. It is also mentioned that internet can have a positive impact on the voice and agency of adolescents. Actually, we all agree that positive use of the ICT, internet, or mobile phone makes our lives easy and also simple. The internet provides us useful data, information, and knowledge for personal, social, and economic development also. And it is up to us to utilize our time on the World Wide Web in a productive manner. The internet is a revolution in information technology. It sometimes seems like teenagers' lives revolve around their phones and technology. From the internet and social media to phones, apps, games, and television and other types of technology. Technology is becoming an essential part of our lives. And usually what we see that young people use the internet and social media to connect with, comment on, and discuss things with others through social networking, emailing, and online messaging. Find, create, or share interesting photos, videos, and articles, play online games also, and learn more about topics that makes them interest, and also as a study tool for school. As I am here as Secretary, Minister of Women and Children Affairs, I'd like to share some of the ministry's activities that is what are the initiatives that the ministry has taken and I should say that our ministry has taken a lot of steps for children and adolescents, and exclusively through our Accelerating Protection for Children project, we are doing our best for the adolescents. And key components of the projects are empowerment of adolescents, capacity building and quality services, support to policy formulation and advocacy, monitoring and knowledge management, and communication for development. And major activities of the project are supporting to establish adolescent clubs and implementing standardized adolescent package, provision of adolescent stipend, establishing community child-friendly spaces, capacity building of parents, caregivers on good parenting skills, social mobilization and community engagement, advocacy for workshop, meeting, seminar, and consultation for developing laws, rules, multimedia and ICT initiatives, social mobilization and community engagement, setting up online portal also. And there are other activities also. We have, under this project, we are going to prepare an important package that is standardized adolescent empowerment package. And there are some important thematic areas which are very much important in empowering adolescents and their their livelihood, such as life skill-based education, health protection, child care, food and nutrition, ICT, gender, child protection, and also ethical values. And under this project, we are going to prepare a national adolescent strategy under this project. And today we had a workshop that I mentioned earlier with the stakeholders. In the strategy, adolescents are identified as an individual group where the indicators of overall development of the adolescent group will be identified, and the challenges will be identified, and and there will be the ways how to mitigate the challenges. And under this project, there are some apps that were developed. As we know, we are passing through a very difficult situation due to worldwide pandemic, that is COVID-19. And under this project, some adolescent clubs are running, and through these apps, the club members are communicating with other members, and they're maintaining communication with others to make them aware about the COVID situation, how to protect them from this pandemic. And we know that as the adolescents are now confined and in their homes and cannot go out, schools are closed, and to some extent they are under mental pressure. So using the device under this project, some counseling activities are provided, especially to the adolescents and also to the parents also for good parenting, because so that they can guide their children and provide some support. And you'll be happy to know that MOCA is implementing another project that is Adolescent Club in Bangla, Kishore Kishori Sthapon Prokolpo. And under this project, there are 4,883 clubs that are going to be established, and the members are between 10 to 19 years old. And the objective of the project is to build, to protect child marriage and to reduce the risk of gender-based violence and orientation on sexual and reproductive health. And there are some activities, and the activities are in such a way that can establish a relationship between the members, amongst the members, and that relationship should be based on friendship. And also there are some activities to build ethical and moral values amongst themselves. And we have another project that is accelerating action to end child marriage, and the project area is Bogra and Jamalpur district. And there are some online activities that is, and some online activities are going on, and awareness programs are on COVID-19 is also going. And under this project, there are 72 adolescent girls club, and the gender promoters are working virtually and through mobile phones under this project. Actually, what I want to say that today's adolescents are our future leaders, and who are full of potentialities, full of enthusiasm. It's our duty to groom or educate this part of our population with ethics, morality, and patriotism to make them responsible and disciplined. They are the agent of social reform. We should take specific and innovative initiatives for their overall development, and should put our vigilant eyes to protect them from online harassment. With the onward development of ICT and also in digital Bangladesh, we cannot prevent our adolescent group from using digital devices, mobile phones, internet. They are using these in the, but the what should be our concern, that whether they are using this in the positive way. There should be an integrated approach, I think, and should be addressed in the holistic way. And with these few words, I would like to conclude my speech, and thank you all once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Secretary, for really detailing out the range of programs that your ministry is spearheading in this space. And I think it's really impressive, and we really look forward to engaging with you, not only through this research, but the whole GAGE research work that we are doing. And I'm sure you're aware of the GAGE research that we are part of. And I think I'm particularly drawing attention to Mahinapa here, who is the policy research uptake lead for all the GAGE related research happening in Bangladesh. So we really look forward to talking to you and seeing how the research we are doing on GAGE can really not only help you now, but also to shape the research that we are doing to more directly support some of the very exciting work that you're doing. Thank you very much. So now I think it's really to sort of share some closing remarks. I really don't want to take too much time because we're already delayed, but if you just allow me maybe 4 or 5 minutes, just a few points. So first of all, I think what's really important about this research are a few things I just want to highlight. So one is this research looks at a very critical age group. Is this 14,